Hey, Scott McMullen here. This is the first in our series of videos to describe the process of restoring a 64.5 K-Code Mustang Convertible. This in particular is one of the very first cars that was built. If you've had the opportunity to get my book, HiPo 1964.5, Ford's first High Performance Mustang, you have the opportunity to go through the book and understand how it is that we arrived at some of this and get into some more detail than we're going to get into today. But I wanted to do this video to show you exactly where these markings are in the car and talk a little bit more about them. So as a Mustang restorer and historian, one of the greatest challenges is to find the information about a particular car that I'm looking at, because the records were, for reasons unknown, destroyed by Ford many, many years ago. Now that's true for the 64.5 to 66 cars. You can actually get the records for the 67 and later cars. So in particular, for these early 64.5 K-Code convertibles, the only source of data that you have for these cars is what's written on them, and of course what's written in my book. So we're going to talk about 4 areas where markings were made on the cars to give directive to the workers on the assembly line. The assembly line was divided into roughly 2 different parts. The first part was the body and paint line, and there were markings specific to the activities that were going on in that part of the line, which are written mostly in this area. There's some additional markings that are written over here underneath the fender as well, but we're not going to look at those today. The markings that are referenced the second part of the line, the chassis assembly line, are written down here on this lower support and as well on this lower support. But let's start first with a couple things. Oh, I should mention this. One of the things that I try to do in a restoration is to preserve as many of these markings as I possibly can. It's to me, one of those things that just helps to authenticate the car as what it is. So I know that there are some rules, or at least they used to be in MCA, where they wanted this all painted over and everything. Of late, I've personally experienced a little leniency in that because of the significance of these numbers, but I'd recommend contacting your MCA judge and get it straight from them. But I always leave these, and I actually have a technique that we've used to be able to sort of just dust this so that when you're looking at it from the top down, you really can't see the numbers very well. That's useful when your restoration is complete and you want this to look like it was completely done. Enough said about that. So the first area we're going to look at here are these numbers on this area of the core support. These were written here using an etching marker that is written directly on the bare metal of the body of the car. The purpose of this is that they wanted to be able to see these markings both when it was bare and after primer had been applied. So this particular type of marker will actually seep through the primer, and that's what you see here. This sort of a purple color is the actual marker that has seeped through this gray primer that's on here. Okay, I'm going to pull up a stool here and go through the detail of these markings and what they mean. So the top line here, this is actually a batch and a sequence number of this body as it was traveling through the body line prior to paint. This is a D746. This is the day of the week, and this is the order in which this body was traveling through the line. Next line down is 76A. That is the body, or is the code for the body type for a 64.5 convertible. Next line down, we're going to get into the exterior body color and the interior code. S46. Below that, it's kind of hard to see here, but this is a BL, the circle around it. That stands for backup lights. This car had backup lights. Next line down, RM, which is for rocker moldings. This car actually had the pinstripe and the rocker molding on the side of the car. And then the last two letters here are PT for power top. This car has a power top. So writing those codes on the core support here was useful in alerting the factory workers as this body was coming down the line, some of the details that needed to be implemented on this particular car. Things like the holes that needed to be generated, the type of rear valance with the backup light holes and so forth that are on this. So quite valuable to be able to find these, particularly if you don't have the data plate for your car, because right here you've got the exterior paint code and you've got the interior code for the car. And in fact, you actually have these, the backup lights and the rocker moldings and power top are not identified anywhere on the data plate. So this is the only place you can find out about those. And then of course, the batch and sequence number up here is interesting to see where this car fell in the order on the particular batch that it was associated with. And I should also mention that there is one other mark that was made on the body line to identify this as a K code, and that is this K right here to the right of the radiator as you're looking at the front of the car. And this was meant to be an indication from a fairly far distance that this was a K or a high performance Mustang body that was coming through. And this was done in a number of different ways. The book has some other pictures. In fact, the picture of the K that's on the blue car from the cover of the book. And that one was written in orange paint. This one was actually white. I thought that was interesting, especially given that these two cars, the blue car and the green car, are only 28 units apart. This is rotation number 330. And the rotation number on the blue high performance K-code convertible is 358. So now we're going to move over to the other side of the core support and look at the markings that were associated with the chassis assembly part of the assembly line. Now, one of the things you've got to do in order to see this, and you need to be careful about it, it's hard to see the numbers right now, or that are written in this corner of this. One of the things I found useful is to get a damp paper towel and dab water on this. And you can kind of see the number starting to appear here. But you don't want to rub too hard, because you can see this was written on here with what's called a mark-all paint marker. And that stuff was written on top of the paint. You can see here on top of the finished black paint, and it tends to come off fairly easily. So anyway, you can see here it's 330. So the rotation number on this car for the chassis line is 330. So this car sat in the 330th position amongst all these other Mustangs that were being assembled at that time. And in the case of the 64.5 K-code Mustangs, on the very first days of production, our research indicates that these cars were built as one big batch, the very first group of them, that were all K-codes. So anyway, this is a really interesting piece of information. You can combine this piece of information with the date codes off of different parts of the car and come up with a fairly accurate picture of where this car was built, because we know how the parts were, the order in which they were built, how long the parts took to make it to the factory, and so forth. And that allows us to paint a picture of literally the date that this car was built. I want to go over one more thing down here on this lower cross member for you to see, and that is over here. I don't know how well you can see it, but again, trying the same technique that I used over there. Dab a little bit of water on this, and you can see a K right there. So again, this was another marking, because at this point, the point at which it was going through the chassis assembly part of the line, this was all painted over up here. All of the body line markings were covered with black paint, so you couldn't see it. So they added this and that rotation number. And then the other thing that isn't here is the sheet of paper, which actually called out all of the information needed in order to assemble this car. So every single option, all of these things, everything on the data plate, and many more, were written on something called a build sheet. And the build sheet was taped right in this area. Actually, there were several of them on the car, but as this main part of the body was going through the line, it was taped right here. And then there was usually another one on the back, at least. And some of the parts, as they made their way to the car, also had a build sheet taped to them, like the fenders. We had pictures of fenders with build sheets on them, and there was a build sheet that was wrapped around the main wiring harness in the car, and you'll find some people have located those in their cars. They were supposed to be torn off and removed by the factory workers before it ever left, but some of them survived. So incredibly valuable piece of archaeology there, carcheology, that you can use to really guide your process. I personally have never seen or never owned a car that still had its original build sheet in it from Dearborn. I did have a Metuchen built Sprint 200 coupe, and that car did have its build sheet up stuffed underneath the seat, totally different looking than the ones that are out of Dearborn. It looked more like a recipe card, whereas the ones from Dearborn are like a little sheet of paper. So those are some of the things to look for as you're going through and assessing what you're going to do with your car, to kind of orient yourself around your approach, how the car originally was assembled, what it looked like, what its options were. And in addition to that, if you've got the book is a great reference. I actually have my book right here, my copy of my own book that I use to reference as I go through here. When I can't remember something that was, that was done, and I need to look back on it. And this book looks like it too. The corners are all dog-eared and everything. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I certainly am open to any questions, or you can contact me over at MustangRollCall.com. I'm happy to reply back and help however I can. Until next time, happy restoration.